Hello and welcome back to Game-Based Learning in the World Language Classroom. The why, what, and how. We're on section 3 of my book, The How. I'm Madame Sensei. I teach Spanish, French, and Japanese to high schoolers out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I love to invent games. I love to bounce ideas off of people. If you want to help me invent games, studio-nemo.com, or the Minecraft Education Ambassadors, or the Minecraft Teachers Lounge, or the Duolingo Educators Network. And we are on chapter 13 of my book, Cardstock Games to Practice Sentences and Vocabulary and All Those Drilling Kills You Hate But You Need. So in a previous episode, we talked specifically about Teams Game Tournament, but we were talking at large about card games that we printed on cardstock. These are going to be different because I don't consider these to be card games even though they're printed on cardstock. Now, I'm looking carefully at the time, and I will make sure that each episode is under 10 minutes, so I may chop this down into 2 shorter episodes. So these are different than cardstock games, like I said. These pieces are different shapes than if you're playing cards. They often have only words on them, no pictures, and they're used differently than you would use a playing card. So I make a lot of games on cardstock. I'm going to warn you now that cutting them out is a total pain, but once you have them forever. So I had a workbook, like many of you do, and I was told I had to use the workbook, and it was dry and dull, and the students didn't like doing it, and 25% of them wouldn't do it anyway, so they were failing just because they weren't doing the workbook, and they weren't getting that essential practice that they needed. So one summer I sat down with all my workbooks and I went through them and I thought, what would make a good game? Okay, anything that would make a good sorting activity or a matching game or a boring fill in the blank. So like here's from Beyond D, here's from Autentico, here's a really cute little time book I picked up at Daiso. Here's a wonderful, I love this, this is Mastering French Adjectives, but it's kind of dry, okay? Skip over anything in your workbook that's just pointless. I can't tell you how many times I looked through the workbook and I was like, this is just dumb. This is just busy work, okay? The students already know the difference between I and he. So there's no point in drilling that because the students already know it. We have better ways of teaching that anyway. So we're working on encoding memory. So think carefully about what is worth your students' time. This was a large amount of work up front. Like I said, I took 2 weeks, one summer, just sat down and did it. But I have it forever now. I don't have to think about it now, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. I don't feel like I have to assign every single section of the workbook now. If I do assign a section of the workbook, if I do want the students doing it, writing it out by hand, and a lot of times I do want them doing that, I often use this as a preview, and that way the students have seen it before, and then the next day as like a retrieval practice, it's like, okay, now write it down. And it's interesting to see how many of them remember it from the day before, but it really helps the struggling students the second time they see it. All right, so let's do the math, okay? Here's math right here. I have about 30 students per class. Sometimes I have 33, sometimes I have 28, okay? But let's just figure 30 students per class. And I thought about it and I was like, I want students in partners. Maybe I'll accept 3 per group. Absolutely not 4 per group. 4 per group, you have one student coasting always. One student not involved in doing this kind of sorting activity. Okay, I should clarify that. In my escape rooms, yes, 4 people. In a station sorting activity, partners, maybe 3 per group. So that means that I'll need 15 separate stations. Okay. But don't panic, because many of these stations are repeats from month to month. All right, so here's an example. This was right out of Beyond D by Houghton Mifflin, okay? And they have this little chart, and nowadays I don't put this stuff in because CD player the students don't need to know, DVD player the students don't need to know, so I can cut those out easily, okay? but I thought, oh, I really want the students to know these basic nouns, okay? They need to know computer, they need to know door, they need to know table, they need to know chair, they need to know map, they need to know whiteboard, okay, all that kind of stuff, the teacher's desk, that stuff. And I need them working with it if they're going to know it. So I printed the 3 columns, and then I just printed really large as possible, the individual answers. And somehow holding it in your hand and doing it like this is so much more interesting than just writing them in the columns. Okay, so here's another one. This was for a Spanish one from what was then Realidades, but now it's Auténtico, pretty much the same thing. Okay, I just printed them as large as I could, and now the students can like physically put them into the columns, all right? And you'll notice I choose the lightest colors I can find in the workroom, just because it's easier to read. Here was another one, and this one, I couldn't print these very large, so I printed them and then I glued them onto index cards so they wouldn't get lost. And same thing here. Okay, that one I couldn't find a light color for. This next one, this is a typical matching exercise from a workbook. It's like, here's one of column A, try one of column B. Okay, and it's like, well, I do want them to think about the subjects and what becomes the subject pronoun. Oh, this wasn't one of those. This was just matching up likes and dislikes. That's what that was. See, I'm not even reading these. This has been so long since I've looked at the workbook. I printed as large as possible, and I made it like a matching game. Okay, here's the question that occurred in the workbook, and here are the answers. Okay, or here we go. Here's the answers right over here. So students just matched up the 2 columns. All right. This is also from Realidades or Auténtico, but they're the same thing, okay? But they had fine, You're supposed to like write 1, 2, 3, 4 in these squares. So instead, I made it super big and I printed the strips really large. And now it's just more interesting this way. The students are thinking about it and they're talking to each other. Sometimes the words are really, really tiny, and it's like a fill-in-the-blank thing, so I print them on popsicle sticks. This one, I managed to make the pictures big enough that I could put over there. Here was like a match, like right next to the picture type thing, so I just did it like that. This was just a bunch of words I printed out and put on index cards, and I just plop it on the table, and the students have to like arrange them into as many sentences as they can. Sometimes there's polling stations, all right? Like, I'll say, what's your favorite fruit? Or what do you like to do on Wednesday afternoon or whatever? And then I'll just put an extra piece of paper out. Just write your name in the column that you like the best. Okay, but this was out of the workbook, what do you like to do? Twister can be a station. I used to do this whole class. I bought enough boards so we could do a whole class. But I don't know, sometimes the students were just a little too, it got crazy. It just got crazy. So sometimes I put it out as a station, and that's super fun. And then post-pandemic, the students don't really want to touch each other. So I made tiny little twister boards, and I made pipe cleaner people. And so the students can twist the pipe cleaner people around. And they love doing that. That's great. And I also put this out for other like game days and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to pause here and chop this discussion about sorts and stations into 2 episodes so that I can make sure that my videos are under 10 minutes. So I will see you on the next episode, and I'm going to like give you the big picture of how it all goes together. Hope to see you there.